Unit 2 sorbet. It's very good.
What?
The Hoff.
Awesome.
Ice cream full of
I understand that there's some blueberry kale thing.
Yes.
You guys have. It's
Yeah.
very
Yes, we do.
Oh, cool. My friend told me to try that.
Yeah, it is like a pound of kale per tub.
Oh, wow.
Well, you know, everybody's all about the kale nowadays.
And blueberry.
And the blueberries, the antioxidants, will all live to be 300. It will be fantastic. Awesome. Okay, so hi. Hello. Hi, people. I'm Tiffany. Oh my gosh, do you have some Ann America magazines?
Yeah, there was a table over there, and they're selling these for $1
Wow.
piece. And I had to buy all their Utana stuff because my favorite.
Wow, did you see there was an Anthe here today? Did you
Yeah,
see
yeah,
the
that's my
girl
friend
dressed as Anthe? Yeah, awesome.
Oh, I was wrong.
Very cool. Okay, so I'm Tiffany. See, there's a Vash and there's a Wolfwood. What was I saying earlier? Of course, you guys are awesome. That's really cool, by the way. Right, so I'm Tiffany. I've been working in anime for a long, long time now. Seems to have just sort of flown by, but right. So my background is originally I was worked in theater, and then that ended up evolving somehow into me getting into voice acting. That was kind of crazy. And so I've worked, this is just kind of like a general Q&A, right? So you can ask all the Q's about all the different things. This is the origin story, as I like to call it, because people usually, that's like one of the top 5 questions. So the origin story is basically this. I consider being an actor to be sort of a congenital condition. It's just a birth defect. Some people are born with it. You can't do anything about it. And there you go. So I was pursuing theater because like that's what's available, right? Is, you know, it's in your school. It's all over the place. Theater, so it's pretty easy to join your local theater department in school or community theater or whatever. They're always wanting volunteers to come and do that. So that's what I did. And another thing that I never used to mention at these panels, and I don't know why, because it seems really obvious, but when I was about 9, I got this Sony tape recorder. And I used to write sketches and sometimes just improv sketches. And I would do the different characters, or if a friend was over, I would make them do some of the characters also. And just these ridiculous sketches, either where I was doing impressions of real people or just characters that I was making up. So that was, I guess, my early voice acting, was doing these little stories on my Sony tape recorder. And God only knows whatever happened to that tape recorder. But anyway, so that was basically my background, and, you know, did theater through junior high, high school, college, all of that. And one day, I was just a normal person working a regular job that was boring, and I wasn't really that actively pursuing acting at that point. I mean, I was doing like community theater stuff, but I wasn't really doing anything that actually paid money. And my old boyfriend from junior high called me up and said, hey, you know, these guys have started, I don't remember exactly how it went, but basically the gist of it was, there's some guys that started up this company here in Houston, which is where I live, and they're going to, I know he didn't say dub an anime, okay, but it was probably something like they're trying to find actors to do voices for a Japanese cartoon, or, I mean, something like that he said, and I was like, oh, that sounds awesome. I mean, I always had an interest in voice acting, but I didn't really know how one would pursue such a thing. I wasn't really trying to pursue that in Houston, Texas. That wasn't really something that was pressing on my mind at the time, you know, like, how will I become a voice actor? Never really thought about it. But anyway, so I got this call one day from Tim Fitzhenry, and he said that there are some guys that are gonna, you know, dub an anime. So it's like, that sounds awesome. Let me have that phone number. So I called and I made my appointment and I went down there to the audition. And really at that time, the company was AD Vision, it was later ADV Films, and they had released a few shows, like 92 through 94, that were subtitled, and they hadn't done anything that was in English yet. There wasn't a whole lot of anime that was being released at that time, and certainly not very much that was being released in English, and sort of the early to mid-90s. And they decided that, they had released these shows that were subtitled, but they were going to do one now that was dubbed, and they needed to find some actors. And the whole company was about 5 or 6 people. And they sort of told all their friends, if anybody knows some actors, tell them that we're having an audition. So that is actually what happened to me. That's how I got involved in it, is some guys made a company to import anime into America, and they were going to dub a show. And so somebody knew those guys and also knew me, and he remembered, hey, Tiffany is an actor, I should call her and tell her about this. And that's really how it happened. So I went down to the audition, February 12th, 1994, and I auditioned and they hired me. And that was, so I was actually the very first person in Texas to be hired as an anime actor. That whole thought of that really didn't dawn on me for several years, but that's like crazy kind of to think that that's what happened, but it really did, and I was there and I saw the whole thing. And Funimation formed within a couple of years of when ADV formed. Now, ADV started in Houston, and Funimation is up in the Dallas, kind of Fort Worth area. And now, originally, when they were releasing Dragon Ball, was the first thing that they had, of course, and they were having that dubbed up at Ocean Studios in Vancouver. And it wasn't until, I think, 1997 or so that they started, like, hey, we could dub it in Dallas, If those guys down in Houston are dubbing stuff, gosh darn it, we can dub things in Dallas anyway. So all of that stuff got started in Texas, and now Texas is like this big mecca for anime dubbing. But, back in 1994, it was a brand new thing, like, hey, guys, let's make an anime. So we did, and we kind of made it up as we went along in a way. It's like, oh, okay, we're dubbing this show. Yeah, the guys who had started ADV, John Ledford and Matt Greenfield, they were aware of some studios that were like the independent studios that were dubbing anime, like say Bang Zoom in LA. I don't think Bang Zoom was around at that time, although I could be wrong. But that's just an example of, there are independent studios, but what was different when ADV started doing it was that they were doing it basically, they were in charge of the production directly themselves instead of just hiring out a separate studio to do it. They weren't that happy with necessarily some of the ways that anime was being dubbed, some of the changes that were made and the way it was directed. So they thought, well, let's do this ourselves. Matt Greenfield, who was one of the co-founders, and he directed and produced that show and hundreds and hundreds of others now. But his background was in theater and film and writing and producing and directing and all of that. So he's like, gosh darn it, I'll direct my own anime. And he did. And anyway, so that's kind of how the whole thing got started. That's how it got off the ground. So basically, whenever they came in and they were going to, dub their second show, I was right there at the top of the list. Like, I called in for an audition because I was one of the most experienced people in the entire state when it came to dubbing, because I had worked on one show. So because I got to work on that first show that they did, I got to be a lead, which nowadays most people, if they're getting hired as voice actors, you don't right off the bat get hired to be a lead. But if no one's ever done it, then someone has to be, has to do those lead roles. And Rob Mungle was the other person who got hired to say, and we're both still around. You cannot get rid of us. We were just like, oh, hey, look, we're still here. So yeah, we're still working in anime, and since then I've branched out and done some other stuff, other voice acting things. Did a couple of video games, done some commercial work, some on-camera commercial work, some films. Most of my work has really been in anime, but I have done other sorts of things. I worked in a talent agency for about 8 years. So I've done over 230 conventions all over the world. Anyway, so any of that kind of stuff, anything that you are interested about, as far as anime or acting or any of it, if you guys have questions, I will talk about anything. Yes, nice young lady over here.